In the last stream, we were working on finally completing the last chapter of the Hellish section of the quest book. We set up our Hellish Technium machine over in the Nether along with our massive oil pump multi-block, and right at the end of the last stream we did manage to get our first Hellish Technium Ingots, and we crafted those of course into our first Hellish Technium machine frame. And I'm happy to report that since the end of the last stream, I have left the world running chunk-loaded for a little bit of time, just so that going forward we're not quite so restrained on resources that we're waiting to backlog on. For example, we now have 23,000 redstone, which again has slowly been surely backlogging over the course of the last couple of hours, to where this drawer is, I think, basically close to full. We also have a ton of ender pearls here as well, and I guess most importantly for our progression today, we actually have a little bit of a backlog of netherite ingots and netherite blocks, and we also have a bunch of netherite blocks in our Hellish Technium machine as well, and that means that right away here, if we go ahead and grab some ultimate Technium ingots, of which we also have 55, we should be able to get a decent amount of Hellish Technium going, and that's going to help us quite a bit, because the plan for today's stream is to start out on the lunar section of the quest book, which begins with us crafting a spacesuit, as well as a rocket, and heading through to a new dimension, the moon, to begin working our way towards lunar technium. Much like the Hellish Technium being made in the Nether, the lunar technium here does have to be made on the moon. We actually have to set up the multi-block structure for this on the moon, and it's made with a bunch of resources that we have yet to even start working on. But before we get started with that, let me quickly throw these 23 ingots into the Hellish machine frame. That's going to start making more Hellish Technium for us. And before we get started with any of the quests in the Lunar quest line, there are a few quality of life improvements that I would like to make that we probably should have made a little while ago. The first is that I would like to get a second AE2 quantum ring. This is going to allow us to wirelessly charge our wireless crafting terminal, and to also use the wireless crafting terminal across dimensions as well, something that up until now we have not been able to do. Now, it does look like currently we do not have any silicon, which is not ideal. We can, of course, kind of temporarily do something like this to speed up the production of silicon. We don't need a whole lot of it to get the requested 8 quantum rings start, and of course the 1 quantum link chamber. Unlike the last time we set this up, we're not going to need to make 2 of these. This time, we're just going to put 1 down, probably directly next to the pre-existing quantum ring, and then on top of that, we're also going to go ahead and get this quantum bridge card. If we hold G here, the quantum bridge card is an upgrade card for the wireless terminal. It allows the linking of the wireless terminal to a quantum bridge. It says put a quantum bridge card and a quantum entangled singularity into your wireless terminal, and put the other singularity into a quantum bridge to connect your network. Your wireless terminal is now quantum linked. You can access your network from anywhere, even across dimensions, and it will be automatically recharged with energy from your network. This is going to be a huge quality of life improvement that makes things just so much easier for us. All we need to do is get some more ender dust, because just like before, if we want to get 2 more quantum entangled singularities, we need to grab 1 regular singularity from here, and we need to blow that up with any kind of TNT, but we're going to make tiny TNT, and of course we also need the ender dust as well. That's going to give us 2 quantum entangled singularities. We're then going to combine that with the quantum card, which is also fairly easy to make. It is going to require a few extra quantum rings. We do have those, but I'm also going to have to request 4 more of those, because we need to actually build the quantum ring as well. And so let me do that, and let me also get another quantum link chamber piece for the middle as well. And then up here, we can just do the exact same thing that we did last time, putting down a couple of blocks to make sure that we don't blow up our floor and have the quantum entangled singularities just fall down into the abyss. If we just do something like this and like that, with a small TNT and a button, that should give us 2 more quantum entangled singularities. And it totally does. Nice. So all we need to do is ideally get rid of this. Then if we grab the quantum rings and the quantum link chamber, directly behind our current quantum ring is where I'm going to put this, just because we do have space on this dense cable here. We're not quite at the point of saturating that. I think we're using about 18 out of 32 channels, which gives us plenty of space. And once we connect this up, it should just be a case. I say that, I'm hoping this works. It actually looks like it might not. You might not be able to build these directly next to each other. You cannot. Okay, that's actually fine. Let me tear this down and put this somewhere else. Okay, so it turns out you can actually lay these flat, so I've just thrown this down somewhere along this line here. I don't really think it matters too much where we put it. All we need to do is make sure that one of our quantum entangled singularities is inside of this quantum link chamber and that this quantum link chamber is connected to the system. From there, all we need to do is take our quantum bridge card, and inside of our wireless terminal, in the top right, we can put in the bridge card, like so. That then gives us a space for a quantum entangled singularity, and with that in, we should now see our wireless crafting terminal presumably start to charge, and more importantly for us, we should also be able to use it in other dimensions, and we totally can, which is fantastic. Even better than that, it really doesn't matter where we are, it should just work, and it's also going to work on the moon as well when we go there, which is very useful. And so now that that's taken care of, the other quality of life improvement that I would like to make is I would like to get a circuit slicer. This is a machine from Extended AE that's going to allow us to kind of get rid of these 4 inscribers, because right now we have a dedicated inscriber for the printed silicon, for the printed logic circuit, the printed engineering circuit, and the printed calculation circuit. The circuit slicer here is going to do all of those in one block, and it's not going to need any of the presses. The caveat there is that we are going to have to use all of the presses to make the circuit slicer, but I think it's definitely worth it because not only is it faster, it's also going to free up some channels here as well by getting rid of a couple of these pattern providers. So if we want to make this, we do have to put all of this stuff into the crystal assembler. Thankfully, no fluid is required there. We do also need to get the concurrent press, which we also do have. That's another benefit because it's going to allow us to automate the concurrent press. A stone cutter should be fairly straightforward. Let's have our system make a stone pickaxe for us, and then we just need 8 engineering processors and 1 extended machine frame, both of which should be fairly straightforward, although I was going to say, might have to request some engineering processors, which might have required that we take the engineering press back out and put it into the inscriber. The good news, though, is that that's not required. We do have the 8 engineering processors that we need, and so if we go ahead and throw both of these into here, we should then be able to get ourselves the circuit slicer. Nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down, let's say right about here. Like this. And the idea with this is that we can make 9 of any printed circuit at once. So if we type in circuit into JEI and we look at the recipe, for example, of the printed logic circuit, this is how we've been doing it up until now with 1 gold and 1 press, but with the circuit slicer, we can just turn a block of gold directly into 9 printed logic circuits, and it just does it without the need for any press at all. And so it's probably time that we take all of these printed recipes out. We can then, of course, shift-right click to clear the recipe, and all I'm going to do now is re-encode the patterns for all of these with the new circuit slicer recipe. That does mean we have to have all of these available in block form, and some of these, for example, diamonds, I don't think we're actually storing in a compacting drawer. I think right now we're still just storing those in a regular drawer, and so there are a couple of resources that we are going to have to switch over to compacting drawers to make sure that this does run smoothly, but it should be much faster and much more efficient, and on top of that, it should also give us the ability to actually automate the production of these concurrent circuits as well. Okay, so I've gone ahead and swapped out both the drawer for silicon and the drawer for diamonds with compacting drawers, and I've put all of the patterns required over into the pattern provider above the circuit slicer. I've also gotten rid of all of the inscribers that we had previously, and now, for example, if we take some diamond blocks and we put these in here, it is going to go ahead and turn those diamond blocks into 9 engineering circuits. And of course, just like before, we can go ahead and put acceleration cards in to make this real fast. One thing we have to do, just like with the crystal assembler, is make sure on the left that this is set to produced items will be auto-exported through any extraction side, and then here we have to set the top to enabled, and now it's going to go ahead and push those up into the system, which should then return them to our inventory. One thing I do need to do is this, to make sure that these guys are now connected up, because we got rid of the other pattern providers that were previously giving them the connection. That now works, and they're dumped in the system. Cool. That's just going to make things a lot faster, especially if we were to go ahead and, for example, request 8 more of these 256k ME storage components. We're actually missing quite a bit of silicon for that. Oh, I need to make another compacting drawer. I thought it was only diamonds and silicon. It turns out that is not the case. We are also not storing our gold in compacting drawers either. Thankfully, that is also a fairly easy fix. I'm assuming gold is over here. It is indeed. Let me quickly swap that out. And then let me also look at speeding up the silicon a little bit as well. Okay, so the gold is now in a compacting drawer, and I've just been doing some testing in a single player world because somebody in the Twitch chat mentioned that when you put speed upgrades into a machine like this from Mechanism that uses a chemical, that the speed upgrades exponentially increase the amount of chemical that is used. I was under the impression that putting in more speed upgrades exponentially increased the power usage, but that the amount of kind of input resources like the sand and the hydrogen would remain the same. But it turns out that's not the case. We did a test in a single player world. We filled both chemical injection chambers full of hydrogen, and then we put 1 piece of sand in each. The one that had no speed upgrades finished the craft just fine and actually had a bit of hydrogen left. The one that had 8 speed upgrades in didn't even get anywhere close. It got like this far on the progress bar before it stopped, and it ran out of hydrogen. So putting speed upgrades into here massively increases the amount of chemical used. You might have known that already. I was not aware. I thought it was just the power that was kind of used exponentially. What that means for us, though, is that it's actually going to be way faster and more efficient for us to just make multiple of the installers and to just upgrade this chemical injection chamber to an injecting factory, and then, of course, to an advanced injecting factory, potentially even an elite and an ultimate injecting factory, and that's going to massively increase the production of silicon without actually using that much more power or that much more hydrogen, because I did try putting 8 speed upgrades into here, and we very quickly did not have enough hydrogen to sustain it. And so we could still put a few speed upgrades in. We probably are making enough hydrogen to sustain a bit of a speed increase and a bit of chemical wastage, but it's definitely the most efficient to just first go all the way up to the ultimate tier installer and then move on from there. Either way, that isn't really a massive problem currently because we're not really in need of another infinity storage upgrade just yet. I was just going to craft it for the sake of crafting it. What I actually want to work on in today's stream now is I would like to start working on this lunar section of the quest book, which begins with the ultimate crafting table. This guy, actually fairly straightforward. It is 8 regular crafting tables with one of those hellish technium machine frames, which we should now be able to request. We have 0 hellish technium in our inventory. However, if we head on back through to the Nether, one thing that we probably should do actually, just to make our lives easier in the future, is grab another one of the remote upgrades and, of course, throw that into a storage drawer that goes here. Right now, we actually don't have a storage drawer for hellish technium, but it's probably going to make a lot of sense for us to grab one of these storage drawers, quickly link this guy right about here, like so, do a quick /back to get us through to the Nether, and then if we just grab one of our logistical transporters, we can do something like this, and like this, make sure this guy has the upgrade, make sure that this is set to extract, and of course, once that has at least 1 ingot, make sure that's locked. I will also put a downgrade in here as well, and I've not even looked at the Twitch chat, but I'm already certain that people are pointing out that actually, Isaac, you fool, you've done this like 9 times now, you should actually just go ahead and make this a compacting drawer from the beginning so we don't have to upgrade it later. Interesting. It looks like the remote upgrade doesn't work cross-dimensionally. That makes sense. The good news, though, is that we have a drawer controller right here that we can then go ahead and put in there. So I did try to bind this twice to the controller in the overworld, but as soon as you cross through to the Nether, it just disconnects. So I think you do have to have a separate drawer controller in the dimension that you're actually trying to use, which is totally fine. In fact, we could have just run some trim, to be fair, over to here as well. It's not really that far. Either way, we do now have access to hellish technium here in the overworld, and just like we've done many times before, it's almost certainly worth teaching our system how to make the hellish technium machine frame. And along the same lines, we should probably also teach our system how to make the netherite gears as well, because we do have a bit of netherite, and we are going to need those not only for this recipe, but also for some future recipes as well. So we'll throw that in there, and then we'll go ahead and quickly request another hellish technium machine frame, at which point we should have everything that we need in order to get this ultimate crafting table, which, for those who don't know, is just a giant 9x9 crafting table with 81 slots to craft in. And so if we do this and this, we can throw this down really wherever we like. For now, I'll put it down right about here. And it's just a giant crafting table that's going to allow us to complete some giant crafts. For example, we have the spacesuit boots the leggings, the chest plate, and the helmet. All of these are made inside of the ultimate crafting table, and for the most part, it is just a bunch of hellish technium nuggets with white wool. And then for the helmet, we also need to get some tinted glass as well. Then down here, we have this heavy-duty plating. This is made with osmium plates, lead plates, steel plates, and lumium plates, again with one hellish technium nugget. And then from there, we can use these heavy-duty plates to make rocket parts that are then going to allow us to actually make the rocket itself, which again requires even more heavy-duty plating. Once we have the rocket, I don't really think we're going to need that much more heavy-duty plating. I don't think it's something that we need to bother automating, for example, despite the fact that we do need a large amount of it, because we really just need it to make the launch pad and the rocket and its subcomponents, and then after that, it's not really going to be used for anything else going forward. And so to make this, it's really not going to be that difficult, I don't think. We have osmium, we have lead, and we have steel. And in fact, we could, if we wanted to, teach our system how to make osmium, lead, and steel plates, which I think is probably not a bad idea, especially given the fact that we have already set up a metal press for the specific purpose of making plates, and we've kind of yet to use it. The only one of these that's going to be slightly tricky, of course, is the lumium plate, because we actually don't have lumium being made just yet. But I think that also shouldn't be too difficult for us, because lumium is another alloy that we can make using our ever-expanding giant smeltery, and it's not a particularly difficult alloy. It is just a combination of glowstone, silver, and tin, all of which we have in abundance. And so what I'll probably go ahead and do is a repeat of what we've done many times before, put down another multi-block mixer, specify that we want it to make lumium, export the silver, the tin, and the glowstone to the controller, and then have this solidifier here continually pull out lumium plates and place them into this drawer. We can then, of course, take all of these plates and place them into whichever one of these is used for plates, which I think is the first one. It is. Cool. So we'll throw all those in, and then from there, it's a case of just requesting however many plates we need to make however many heavy-duty plating we're going to need to make all of the components for the rocket and the launch pad. So that should be fairly straightforward, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Immediately, we have run into a problem, and that's that we've actually filled up all of the slots, or almost all of the slots, of this stock export bus. The good news is that we can go ahead and make a capacity card and place that into the last slot right about here, and that's going to give us an extra line of capacity to put in the glowstone, the tin, and the silver. Another small quality of life improvement we can make here actually is the recipe for glowstone. Currently, we're making glowstone by using this recipe above our purification chamber, which is right here. We're currently turning 1 nickel dust into 1 glowstone dust. We can make this much more efficient by swapping the recipe for zinc dust, now that we have zinc being made automatically, because 1 zinc dust gets you 3 glowstone dust as opposed to just the 1. So we can get triple the amount there by just using zinc instead of nickel. And I'm hoping that we can just go ahead and throw zinc into our crushing factory, like so, to get some zinc dust, and it might be the case that I actually have to swap that recipe, because I think that this recipe is using the wrong kind of zinc. Let me do that real quick. I don't know how much that matters. I do know, though, that we want to make sure it's encoded without the oxygen, and preferably with the right zinc encode, and then we'll also go ahead while we're here and just swap this out to teach it that we can make zinc dust with 1 zinc ingot. And now when we request that, we're going to get 3 times as much glowstone as we did previously. And of course, the same efficiency gains I mentioned earlier do count for the purification chamber. Currently, we're using 8 speed upgrades inside the purification chamber, which is why this purification chamber is tearing through oxygen to make the glowstone. If we take those 8 speed upgrades out and instead swap those out for installers, we're going to be much more efficient when it comes to our oxygen usage, and we should still be able to make the glowstone fairly fast. So we now have the lumium plates being made here. I do think, even though we're not going to need the auto crafting, we actually can use the AE2 system here to kind of give us an idea of how much of everything we're going to need. For example, if we go ahead and encode patterns that teach the system how to make these spacesuits, we can then get an idea of how many hellish technium nuggets we're going to need, and therefore how many hellish technium ingots we're going to need. The same is also true for the rocket. I think that's where it's really going to come in useful, because the rocket here, of course, requires a lot of those heavy-duty plates, and getting an idea of how many of these we need is going to make our lives a lot easier in terms of figuring out how much lumium, steel, lead, and osmium we're going to need in plate form. So let me teach the rocket fins. We'll encode that. Let's Let's also go ahead and teach the nose cone. We can encode that. We'll also teach the rocket engine. We can encode that. And then we might as well do the launch pad as well. We're not really going to need the launch pad, but just to get an idea, we can then go and throw all of those into one of these. Let's do something like this. And with all those taught, if I now go and request a rocket, it tells me that we need 158 heavy-duty plating. It's also at that point where it's worth teaching the system how to make the heavy-duty plating as well, so that we can get like a raw number in terms of how much lumium, for example, we're going to need. So now if I request that rocket again, we need 1,384 more plates than we already have. We also need way more osmium. I think osmium is currently being placed into a drawer that has a downgrade in. It is. Let me take that out. That should allow us to hold way more osmium and get up to the amount of osmium that we need. As for everything else, though, our system, of course, knows how to make the steel plates. It knows how to make the lead. It's kind of telling us here that we have enough steel and lead to make that happen. And I don't think it's going to take too long to get the amount of osmium we need. I also don't really think it's going to take that long at all to get the amount of lumium either, although I'm assuming the limiting factor is glowstone? Oh no, I think the limiting factor here is just the ratios. You need 3 times as much tin as you do silver, and you need a fair bit of glowstone as well. So one thing we can do in here now is we can probably reduce the amount of sand being sent. We could even look at sending compressed sand instead of just regular sand. The same's true for stone as well. That would probably be useful. And then let's also go ahead and increase the amount of tin and glowstone that we send. Let's go ahead and send like 3 tin and 2 glowstone for every 1 silver. That's going to fill this up a bit more, but it should hopefully make that lumium a bit faster. And slowly over time, that will come in, and we'll just have what we need. Speaking of which, let me also, I guess, go ahead and see if I can't put in a request for like 1,700 steel plates. The good news is we made a bunch of steel a few episodes back, and so now requesting that much steel should be fine. I'll also do the same for lead as well. We don't need quite as much lead, but I'm going to go ahead and request 1,700 anyway, just so we have way more than we need. Capacity-wise, we actually might need to look at making a larger storage disk. The good news is, of course, we could go ahead and just request, for example, another 64K storage component here and put one of those in. Up until now, we've only been using 1K storage components, which has actually worked out just fine, but it's probably about time that we do get our first large storage drive, just so we can store some of the larger quantities of items like the plates here that we are going to need so many of. So if we do a quick one of these and throw that in, that's just going to give us that extra level of safety in terms of storing all those items, and it's going to make sure the system doesn't clog up. Now though, while we wait for some of that stuff to come in, we should actually be able to make the spacesuit fairly easily, I think. We just need a lot of wool, which we're of course getting from our data model, and we need a lot of hellish technium, which we do have. So the only thing we don't have the ability to make a lot of currently is the tinted glass, because this is made with regular glass and amethyst shards. We did make our first amethyst shard a few episodes back. I have got no idea where we put that amethyst shard, but if we wanted to make more of them, we can make them like we did before using the super empowered crystals, which we do have. If we take this and run it through the crusher, we're going to get another amethyst shard just like we did in our previous episode. The thing is though, if we wanted to make a lot of these for the tinted glass, that would be quite expensive to do it all with the super empowered crystals. The good news is that over here, we can actually make amethyst shards using 1 earth and 4 precious, and we have 25,000 precious and 114,000 earth inside of our replica system, and so really it should just be a case of taking our memory chip, placing that inside of our identification chamber with the amethyst shard. You might need 2 amethyst shards to make this happen. We'll find out. I think it might say like amethyst 0.5 or something along those lines here. Yeah, just 50%, although actually you just need the 1. Cool, it just runs twice. That's fine. As soon then as this is done, we should be able to take this out, place it back in the chip storage, and now in here, we can go ahead and request 128 amethyst shards, and it's just going to go ahead and make them. And of course, as you can see here, we have the ability to make 6,400 amethyst shards with the amount of earth and precious that we have. One thing we might have to do here is kind of unassign one of these from making a continuous amount of unstable matter to actually free one of them up to make the amethyst shard. And there we go, the amethyst shards are being created. We could of course make this faster if we wanted to. We only need 52 amethyst shards, and so if we just quickly increase the speed of this using our time in a bottle, we should get all the amethyst shards we're going to need fairly quickly, and then a few excess as well that we can use in the future. And so if we take all of those and do something like this with, of course, glass in the middle, boom and boom, that gets us 26 tinted glass. And so now it should just be a case of taking a bunch of wool and a bunch of hellish technium nuggets, heading over to our ultimate crafting table and clicking all of these recipes in. We can get the helmet, we can get the chest plate, we can get the leggings, and we can also get the boots. Nice. I believe if you don't have the full set of space armor on, you will die immediately when you go through to the moon. One thing I am interested in is, can I put creative flight onto my space chest plate to allow us to fly on the moon? We totally can, because right now we have, of course, flight on our diamond chest plate, but it's going to be easier if we don't have to take this off every time we come back to the overworld. It's also going to be nice if we can fly on the moon as well. We also have the speed. It might be worth putting speed 5 on the spacesuit leggings as well, just so that we, again, don't have to kind of swap out back and forth like this every time we want to regain our speed boost here in the overworld. And not too long later, we now have speed 5 on our spacesuit leggings as well. And so now we can take a look at making this gas injector. This allows the injection of liquid oxygen into our spacesuit, presumably to allow us to breathe once we get through to the moon. To make this, we need 6 fluidizer casing, 1 more hellish technium machine frame, and 2 ultimate tanks. Most of that seems pretty doable. I am starting to think that we might actually need a bit more hellish technium than what we have. So over here, we just need a bit more antimatter, of course, if we want to get more ultimate technium, which should be very doable because we're just missing, as per usual, nether and quantum. And as mentioned earlier in the stream, we do have a lot of enderpearl crates now that we can throw into here. And of course, we always have a bunch of fungus available because it's growing very quickly over in the nether. And so it should be very easy for us to get a decent amount of ultimate technium, and then therefore, of course, a decent amount more hellish technium as well. I will go ahead and re-engage this replicator as well to get that stuff coming in even faster. And again, while we wait for that back over here, we should now have, I think, everything that we need to make the gas injector. And the good news as well is that we should already have oxygen being made as part of our setup downstairs. And so what we should be able to do is place this down somewhere over here. Now, the bad news is that I'm pretty sure that this oxygen that we do have is going to be in gas form, and so we are probably going to have to get a rotary condensator to swap that from the gas version into the liquid version of oxygen. Okay, never mind, it turns out the quest book is incorrect. You actually don't need the oxygen in liquid form, you need the oxygen in gas form. Putting this down is the correct way to do it, and we do need to reconnect that up like that, at which point, presumably, we can then put this in here, and it should go ahead and fill this up with oxygen. If we press U on here, it does show oxygen at 10,800, so I'm wondering if we have to get up to 10,800 here before that's actually going to fill up. The good news is we can do something like this to hopefully fill that up a bit faster. And then we should see, yeah, there we go, that actually start to work. We can also make this way faster as well. Now, the bad news here that I was warned about in the Twitch chat is that, oh, that didn't delete my flight modifier. Never mind, it totally did. We just have flight blocks. This no longer has flight on it. The potentially good news is that we might be able to re-add flight, although I've got a sinking feeling that we're going to re-add flight here and it's going to take all of the oxygen out. I also don't know. I assume we spend the oxygen, like, while we're in space. No, the oxygen is still in there. That's good. Okay, and now we do have both oxygen and flight. My question really is whether or not we're going to be able to refill it, or if we have to put the flight modifier back onto it every time we refill it. I'm actually not quite sure. Hopefully that's not the case, but if it is the case, we could just put down some more flight blocks on the moon to make that work. Either way, now we are kind of just needing to get all of the heavy-duty plates. We've got 1,000 Lumion plates. Those are coming in. Over here, we are slowly but surely working through the steel and lead plates, and if we wanted to, we could, of course, do something like this to make the production of those plates just that little bit faster. And on top of that, one thing that I did mention at the end of the last stream is the possibility of enchanting our annihilation plane here to get us an increased number of netherite scrap. Right now, it's not a huge problem because I've let the system run, but we are going to very quickly run through the netherite that we have, and we're going to run into a situation where it's going to be very difficult for us to get hellish technium if we don't increase the speed at which we're getting that netherite scrap. To enchant it, we are going to have to get an enchanting table. That part should be fairly straightforward. We need a book, which we can do, and then an enchantment table, which is fine. And of course, we're going to need some bookshelves as well to get a higher level enchant. The difficult part might be getting to at least level 30. The good news is that we do have some furnaces down. The bad news is that that furnace, for whatever reason, didn't seem to have any XP in it. Over here, this one does have a ton of XP in it. Nice. That takes us up to level 61. And so real quick, I'm going to get a bunch of bookshelves here, throw those down somewhere around this enchanting table, and then let's see if we can't enchant this annihilation plane, ideally to get something like Fortune. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this annihilation plane here. One thing I have noticed is that we're not actually making any more debris, and after a quick bit of investigating, it turns out that over here, I never set this export bus to actually export lava to here. It's just exporting the crimson planks. The reason for that is that previously we had our lava setup down here. I have since removed that lava setup, and so now there's actually no lava being sent here. The good news, of course, is that we do have unlimited lava being produced by our infinity cell, and so if I put that on there, we should get that coming in again nice and quick. It might be worth, of course, throwing a couple of acceleration cards into here just to increase the speed at which that lava gets exported. There we go. And so now we should be making those lava planks way faster, and that should once again bring our debris back online and should start making more netherite scrap. Of course, over here, I've thrown down an enchantment table with more than enough bookshelves. I believe 15 was the number I was told by chat, but we've thrown down 18 just to be safe. And so now, if we throw this in here with lapis, we can enchant this. And this got Fortune 2 with Efficiency 4 and Unbreaking 3, which actually already is pretty good. We could, if we wanted to, try and eke out a bit more by, first of all, making some more paper and then some more books. We could enchant some books, and if we get Fortune 2 again, we could try and use an anvil to kind of combine the Fortune 2 with the Fortune that we have to try and get Fortune 3. Whether or not, I was going to say whether or not it's worth it is a different question, but then I immediately got Fortune 2. And so it might actually just be worth it. Can I do this? I totally can, and that gives us Fortune 3. And so I guess with that, we can probably put this over here. I don't think that Efficiency or Unbreaking are negatives for us, and I think that should just give us more netherite scrap per break than we were getting previously. It looks like we got 6 or 5 from that last set there, and it looks like we are getting more on average now. And so that quick little setup should get us way more netherite scrap, and therefore way more netherite for our future hellish technium endeavors. The next thing I'd like to work on, because we're still waiting on our lead plates to come in, is I would like to work on our induction matrix up here, because now you'll see that our inputs and outputs are identical all the time, and that's because we fully filled up on almost 60 billion FE worth of power, and currently our limiting factor in terms of both receiving more and holding more is just the stuff that we have inside of the induction matrix, because right now these are actually backing up on power, so we have more, we can generate more. We even saw that in the last episode, we can generate more than 300,000 FE per tick, but our induction matrix is hard limited currently at 300,000 FE per tick. Between streams, I did go ahead and teach our system how to make a few more of these parts here, and so I am going to request a few more. Requesting more induction cells will increase our capacity. Requesting more providers will increase our input and output rate. Right now, I think we just have a couple of basic providers. I think we have 3 of them, giving us 306,000 FE input and output. Even just getting one advanced provider would allow us to kind of retire the 3 basic ones we have and still give us more than double the throughput. And then, of course, getting the induction cells here just gives us like a massive amount of storage. The elite one can hold 204 billion FE just on its own, let alone the 60 billion that's already in there. And so it's possible we could just make the induction matrix here bigger. We could build a bigger multi-block and put more of the lower tier ones in, but I really don't see much point in doing that. I feel like it's going to be much more beneficial to just, for now at least, keep it the same size and put in some higher tier induction providers and induction cells to give us even more capacity and even more throughput. Okay, so I've requested one more advanced induction provider and 1 elite induction cell. So let's see here. If we break this, it will take our system offline temporarily. And I was going to replace the induction providers we have, but I guess we have space to just do this and this. Let me quickly check. I think that is now full. It is. So if we were to go ahead and close this up, we should now see a big change. We've got much more capacity. We can now hold 262 billion FE, and we can input and presumably output up to 1.12 million FE. Now, right now we are maxing out, but as I suspected, that's only until we clear the backlog inside of all of our biogenerators. Now that backlog is clear, we can see what we're actually producing, which is close to 500,000 FE per tick, which is pretty good. So it's probably not going to take too long for this to fill up, at which point we could definitely look at increasing the capacity even further. For now, though, we are actually done on requesting all of the plates that we need, and so we should finally be able to look at actually crafting all of these heavy-duty plates, and then using these heavy-duty plates to craft a bunch of these rocket parts. To do that, it's quite possible we might need even more hellish technium than what we have. Over here, we're back up to 60 ultimate technium ingots. I'm going to go ahead and take maybe 32 of those and run those through to the nether to start making even more hellish technium, and then I'll see about how many plates we can grab. Again, oil is the problem. I did kind of foresee this happening when we set this up, which is why we put down this ultimate fluid tank. Alas, it doesn't seem to have been enough. The good news is if we wanted to, we could take one of these hellish technium machine frames. It feels a little bit wasteful to use one of these, but if we take one of these and place it into the oil pump, we can make it 80% faster, almost twice as fast, without having to actually build another multi-block oil pump. That is, of course, going to use even more power, but as we've just seen, power isn't really a limiting factor for us. In fact, it might be something that becomes a problem if we get too much power, because if we get too much power, then our reactor's not going to work and we're not going to get any more of the spent nuclear waste, which would actually affect our ability to make advanced technium. Either way, let me grab a bunch of aluminum plates, let's grab a bunch of lead plates, and let's grab a bunch of steel plates, as well, of course, as a little bit of hellish technium in nugget form to see if we can't start making some of these heavy-duty plates. Oh, we also need osmium plates. I completely forgot about the osmium plates because we needed nowhere near as many of them. I need to request 632 osmium plates. And 600 osmium plates later, we can now finally begin making these heavy-duty plates. So, if we want to make the rocket, we need 158 heavy-duty plates. And then on top of that, we also need however many you need for the launch pad, which I can, of course, check here. We need 9 launch pad, but you get 9 at a time, and so we need an extra 27 on top of the 158 that we need for the rocket, which means we need 185 heavy-duty plates in total. You can make an auto version of the ultimate crafting table, this guy right here. It's a bit pricey though, and we already have the regular ultimate crafting table, and so with the auto crafting table, you can like put a chest above it, you can dump all the items in, it will pull the items down and do the craft automatically, so you could set up some automation, but again, we only really need about 3 stacks of these, and so real quick, I'm just going to take the plates that we need out of the system, dump them into the crafting table, take out the heavy-duty plates, and then we'll come back to craft those up into the parts required for the rocket. Okay, so I've made over 2 stacks of heavy-duty plating, but we are really limited by the amount of hellish technium nuggets that we have. One thing we can do is we can accelerate the oil pump, because it is oil, I think, that's still our limiting factor. We have everything else. It's just 32 buckets of oil at a time. Unfortunately, there isn't an infinity oil cell that we can make for our AE2 system. Fortunately, though, we can use some of the 13 hours in our time in a bottle to make this faster at producing oil. What I'm going to do, though, I'm going to leave that running for now, though, to back up, and we'll make the rest of the plates in a little while, because if we look a bit further ahead, before we go to the moon, we, of course, have to build it. We have to build the launch pad. Then we have to get rocket fuel. To make the fuel here, and for some reason we need it in bucket form, I assume that's to put it into the rocket. To make the fuel, though, we have to build a multi-block refinery from Immersive Engineering where we combine the oil that we're currently mining in the nether with empowered oil. And the empowered oil here is made by dropping empowered canola seeds into crystallized oil. Empowered canola seeds are made by empowering canola seeds with a crystallized canola seed, which we can make by zapping canola seeds. So canola is something we have a little bit of, and in fact, I think that we have, canola growing in a cloche over here, because previously we were using this canola to make the main output upgrades, which are inside every single one of our melon cloches right here. But now we need to take that canola and do a couple of things with it. We need to zap it over here. Let me do a quick one of these. Perfect. Then we need to take the zapped stuff and ideally kind of hijack this setup. It's going to be difficult to hijack this setup because of the fact that it's being utilized kind of continuously for other means. So I guess we could either turn it off. I guess we could maybe just disconnect this for a second, and that would probably allow us to use this for a minute. I'm not entirely certain how much fuel we're going to need to get to the moon. Eventually, we are going to have to automate the production of fuel because you guessed it, if we look at the recipe here for the fuel and press U, it's required for the production of lunar Technium Ingots. For now, though, I think we can just get away with making however much we're going to need for the moon, and then we can kind of reevaluate the full automation line at some point in the future. I'm being told I need 5 buckets of fuel to actually get to the moon. That should be fine because you get, I believe, 1 bucket per empowered canola seed. And we already have 2 of those empowered canola seeds ready to go. So I'm going to quickly zap up 3 more of these, and then I'll reconnect this, and we'll look at using this to get the canola oil. Speaking of that, though, actually, if we go all the way back up to Advanced Technium, under the Deep Slate tab, there are 2 quests that we never completed, and those are the quests for the canola press and for the fermenting barrel, both of which we are now going to need. Thankfully, both of these are super easy for us to make. The fermenting barrel, even easier actually. And so if we take both of these, not only is that going to complete this quest line for us, oh no, the oil generator is 1 more quest. This really isn't necessary for what we're doing here, but if we craft it, we are going to get the satisfaction of having completed 1 of the quest lines. Like that. So now, if we take these guys, the canola press is going to use a little bit of juice, and so we could do with putting it down where we have power available. And I think all we do here is put the canola in, and then if we time it a bottle it, we can get some canola oil fairly quickly. From there, we want to take that canola oil and pump it into the fermenting barrel. If we do something like this, and like this, that's going to start turning that canola oil into fermented canola oil. Again, if we accelerate that, it should make it a fair bit faster. And then once we have the refined canola oil, we can then use that, of course, in the making of our crystallized oil if we combine it with some crystallized canola seeds. So essentially, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw down one of our tanks kind of just above this with another mechanical pipe. That's going to allow us to slowly start backing up on the refined canola oil. The idea here, oh, that tank is full. Okay, it didn't look full, but it totally was full. The idea here being that hopefully, while we work on getting more of the activated, of the empowered canola seeds, we can start to back up on the refined canola oil so that hopefully we have enough to actually start using it when we need it. Okay, so not too long later, I've got 5 empowered canola seeds. Let me claim my quest rewards here and dump those in the system. So now we, of course, need to get, let's say, 3 buckets of empowered oil, because you do get 2 buckets of fuel per bucket of empowered oil. And so now this should be fairly straightforward. If we do something kind of awkwardly like this, and we grab a bucket, we can then take our refined canola oil, drop that down, and then drop in one of our crystallized canolas, and then drop in one of our empowered canolas, and boom, we get ourselves some empowered oil. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and request a basic tank here. Again, we only need a few of these, and so I guess it probably makes more sense to use the tank here in bucket mode to pick this up. And then, of course, we can repeat that 2 more times with activated and then empowered, pick it up, and that should be all of the oil that we're going to need, at least all of the empowered oil we're going to need. Now, the slightly trickier bit, of course, is building the refinery and combining the empowered oil with the regular oil to make the fuel. Thankfully, this also shouldn't be too difficult, though. It's mostly stuff we've made before. We need more steel scaffolding, more redstone engineering blocks, more iron sheet metal, more heavy engineering blocks, more light engineering blocks, and more fluid pipes. All stuff we've made a bunch of times for things like our metal press over there, and of course, for things like our actual advanced Technium multi-block. And so real quick, I'm going to acquire all the items we need to build this, and then we kind of just got to decide where we're going to put the refinery. And at that point, we should have everything we need to actually bring that fuel together. And in the time it's taken us to do this, we do actually have more than enough hellish Technium nuggets to get the remaining stack and a bit of heavy-duty plates. And so with the fuel, we should be able to head on out to the moon. And not too long later, I have gone ahead and purchased the refinery placer, and I've acquired all of the blocks needed. And again, using the immersive multi-block controller, we should be able to right-click to place all of that down, and then using the engineer's hammer, we should be able to right-click on the heavy engineering block to make the refinery. Nice. So I will take a quantum entangler here. I'll request 10 just so we have some backlogged for the future. We're going to use that, of course, for our power. And then from there, we just need to get some oil from the nether and some empowered oil. Of course, going forward, we will fully automate this because it's going to be needed for progression, but we're a fair ways away from the lunar technium at the moment. And so for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like this and set that to extract. And then I'll probably also go ahead and just grab another tank. In fact, actually, this tank's probably empty now. It is. Let me grab this. Let me head on back home through to the nether. And if we just siphon a little bit of oil from here, we should be able to throw that down next to the other side of the refinery. And that's going to give us everything we need to make our first few buckets of fuel, which of course is then going to allow us to head through to the moon. The tricky part is actually getting that out. Can I do that? I totally can do that. And if I right click a few more times, we can get more than enough oil. Place that down right about here. Throw down another pipe to extract. Like that. And now this should be basically good to go. We just need one of these quantum entangler porters to allow us to actually send power to this thing. Let's go once again to power output, set, and then we'll eject power to the bottom, like so. That should begin making fuel. It totally does. And then from there, I'm going to assume, because of the way it's shown, that we totally can just get that in bucket form. Interesting. I really thought I'd have to use the bottling machine for that, but thankfully, not the case. We'll come back to this because right now we need to actually make some of the other components required. We have all of the heavy-duty plating we need. We now need to make things like the fins. So I do see that those fins need steel plates. We also need a bunch of simple tanks, which should be fine. And this also needs more steel plates as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to request like another 250 steel plates. We're running out of steel real fast. We had like 5,000 steel at the start of the episode. Part of that is also due to the fact that I have been making more and more ultimate technium, which of course requires the fluidizer casing, which is using a fair bit of our steel. Of course, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and re-engage our smeltery here because we've got a ton of iron, and so making more steel should be fairly easy for us. But over here, to make the rocket, I need 1 nose cone, I need 8 fins, and I need 1 engine. So which one of those is the easiest? The fins seem pretty straightforward, but if we want to make 8 of those, we do need more of those steel plates. I have been periodically speeding this guy up, as always, using the time in a bottle to make those plates come in nice and fast, and we are now at a point where actually replenishing the time in our time in a bottle doesn't cause us to go negative on power. We're generating so much that the extra 50,000 FE per tick that it costs to leave that running actually is fine. Like, we're still net gaining power even with the time in a bottle just inside of this TIAB charger, to the point where it could actually be worth getting a second time in a bottle and leaving it in here kind of full time, just so we always have charge ready if we need it. Back over here though, can I get up to 8 fins? I totally can get to 8 fins. Fantastic. Then we need to go ahead and make 1 engine, which looks fairly straightforward. We do also need 2 elite Technium machine frames and 1 more hellish Technium machine frame, which is fine, he says, despite not having the netherite to make that happen. The reason that we don't have the netherite to make that happen is presumably because it's all over here. It is. Also, we're kind of using it all to make other stuff. Let me quickly head back and like put this in manually to request this. That gets exported real fast, eh? Okay, in that case then, let me temporarily do this so that I can put this in here and actually request this before it all gets exported away. And you know what? Let me also take these out. I don't think we need those acceleration cards making that quite so fast going forward. I will re-put the block in to make sure that works, but I just don't want it to be quite so fast in the future. Either way, back up here, we are going to need more of those tanks as well. Before that, though, what do we need for the nose cone? The nose cone is actually very doable. Boom. Nice. And so now we are just missing that engine. And for the engine, we of course need the machine frames that we requested, which are done. And we also need to get 11 simple tanks, which should be really straightforward. And it was. Nice. So that should be the engine taken care of. It is. And once all of those quests are confirmed to be complete, which they are, we should now be able to make the rocket, which we can. And then from there, we need to actually fuel the rocket, which I'm assuming we do once we have the launch pad. So the launch pad, thankfully, is just more heavy-duty plating. Fantastic. I'll go ahead and throw this down really anywhere for now because we're going to use this once and then we're going to just use waystones. So I believe we right-click this onto here. We totally do. And then in here, we can put some fuel in. To do that, you can shift right-click onto the rocket. And then with that, you can just put the bucket in and it's going to fill it up with fuel. Nice. Okay, so we just need 2 more buckets of fuel, which of course we can grab from here. If we right-click, we can do a /home, put that in over here with a shift right-click and boom, and then a quick /back and a quick /home gets us our 3rd bucket of fuel. Nice. So that is now full and ready to go. Let's make sure that we do indeed have a waystone ready to put on the moon so that we don't have to come back via the rocket, because that would be very bad for us. And so now it should just be a case of picking our skin. We have frozen, normal, galaxy, military, rusty. I'm going to go for rusty here. Can I wear this, or does this go on my rocket? Oh, that goes on the rocket. That's kind of cool. And then from there, inside of here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we hit spacebar, and that is going to trigger the launch of our rocket. I didn't read the quests, so I'm hoping there's no surprise in store here. One thing we've not done, there is a quest at the top here for canned food that can be eaten in space, and one thing I didn't know about until the Twitch chat told me is that the hunger curia that we have actually only works in the overworld. I'd not really noticed it, but I did test it, and if we're in the nether, the hunger curia doesn't work, and we do start to lose saturation quite quickly, especially if we run around a lot. The same is going to be true on the moon, but given the warp stone and given the ability to /home and /back, we are going to be able to kind of survive, I think, without the canned food, because it is fairly expensive. It requires a fair amount of this heavy-duty plating. We might end up cracking that just to complete the quest, but for now, at least, I think it is unnecessary. Once we're at this screen, I believe we want to go ahead and press space to pause, and then from there, we can click on the moon and click launch. That's going to take us to the moon. Usually, you want to hit spacebar straight away here, because if you let go of spacebar, the speed increases at the top. If you hold spacebar, you slow down quite a lot. And if I press F3, you can see our Y level is currently at 515, 10, 5. If I let go, the Y level is going to go down real fast. And if you're not careful, you will crash land into the moon and explode and die, which is not good. You can kind of strategically let go of the spacebar occasionally to increase the speed at which you get down to the surface of the moon. But eventually, once you get too close, you want to make sure you're holding space so that you don't crash land. And if you've done it right, we should just land nicely. And we do. At which point you can press shift, and we're free and clear on the moon. Nice. So now, we'll put this down, we'll call this moon like that, click save, and of course we can then just go immediately back home, and now we can travel to the moon whenever we'd like, and we don't die when we go. We do use oxygen. Let me do a quick test here. If I take this out, can I put this into the gas injector without losing the flight modifier? It still takes a real long time, even if you only need a tiny bit of oxygen, and the answer I'm going to guess is no. Right, okay, fine. That is really unfortunate that it deletes the flight modifier every time that happens, but it's not the end of the world. We can make that work. And so next time, chat, we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and begin working on this bottom section of this quest line here. We're going to actually grab some of... Okay, so it turns out that if you go to the moon without a spacesuit on, you just die. Which is not ideal, like you die instantly. There's no slow death animation, you just die immediately, which really sucks because it means that we can't get our armor back, like our spacesuit back, without making an entirely new spacesuit. I've started the process. I've made another spacesuit helmet and some more spacesuit boots, and I made a spacesuit chest plate, which is down over, whoops, not up here, it is down over here. I move very slowly now because I've lost my speed modifier, but over here we do have the chest plate as well, but now we don't have enough hellish technium. I've already spent a bunch of hellish technium remaking this armor. I also don't have my wireless crafting terminal either. If we want to make the spacesuit leggings, though, we need 33 more nuggets, which is like 4 more ingots, and it's already taken a little while to get this far because we were kind of running out of some of the other items. I have made another time in a bottle. This kind of forced me to. Thankfully, you can speed this up and then put this in to kind of double speed it up and get quite a lot of time quite quickly, of course, just at the cost of power over in here, which is a price that we now have to pay. We did also lose our curio, our nether curio, and our food curio. So I'm back to eating apples temporarily. And if we do go through to the nether, if you click the moon again, we would die again. Don't do that. Going to the nether does work. There's no flight modifier here, which is not ideal. I'm going to very quickly accelerate that, although it looks like that oil tank is full. So over here, the oil tank looks full, but maybe it's not full. That could be a visual anomaly. No, the oil tank is full. I got no idea why that's not working. Let me accelerate that. It's possible we put the external storage on the wrong place, although actually I bet, you know what the issue is? I bet the issue is that I took those acceleration cards out earlier in the episode. Now that I think about it, I need to do this, which is what I didn't do earlier. But we're working on it. We're working towards slowly getting the leggings back. The trouble is, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get the netherite scrap back. We are working on it, of course. Like over here, we have this working. I did not put this back, which is, now I think about it, a bad idea. That I forgot to do that earlier because it means that we haven't been making any netherite this whole time. Let me get more flux cables and let's reconnect that up. Essentially though, what I was saying before we immediately died is that next time we're going to be able to come back and we're going to be able to start working our way through the remainder of the suit up quest line. We can get some moonstone and some moon sand and we can use that to get some moonstone dust. And we're going to build a few multi-blocks to get dirty Neptunium, Desh, and Ostrom dust. From there, we can, of course, get the regular versions of those, and then we can get, like, some ore versions. You guessed it, we're going to make some dimensional ore extractors. Of course we are. Once we have those, we can then look at getting an even better version of the armor, and then from there, we can get some more resources that are going to allow us to progress forward. And just like many times before, we also have a bunch more hostile neural networks that we have to do as well for some moon-based mobs. And then we can actually look at making the lunar Technium Ingot and move on to the final section of the quest book. But I guess between streams now, assuming that we don't get that hellish Technium somewhat quickly, we've got 18, we're kind of close. We need like 2 more ingots now to get the remaining set of leggings to go get our things back. Between episodes, I'm going to get the remaining hellish Technium, I guess. Chat has told me a very awkward feature as well that I'm going to let you know of in case you do this. If you go through to the moon and you break the grave, it will swap out the armor that you are wearing for the armor that you were wearing at the time when you died. And so apparently what happens is you have a full set of space armor on, you're on the moon, you break your grave, the grave puts the other armor back on, but because I wasn't wearing a chest plate at the time that I died, it's going to put the armor back on without the chest plate, and so I would immediately die again if I were to just break the grave on the moon. And so apparently what we have to do is go to the moon, take this auto breaker that I've made from Actually Editions, place that down next to the grave, use that to break the grave, and then we can pick up the items that are then spewed out, and then from there everything should be fine, so long as we then don't, forget in the future to make sure we have the full spacesuit on all the time. Okay, so I made another heat protection curio. I went back through to the nether. I took the digital miner with the quantum entangler portal. I manually did some more mining for ancient debris to get us more netherite, to get us more hellish technium nuggets. We now have the extra hellish technium nuggets. We can make the leggings, and once we have the leggings, we can then go ahead and whack those on. We can make sure that we're wearing a full set of armor. I don't know if I need like a lever or anything for the auto breaker. I will take one just in case we do. I'm going to triple check. Again, I'm going to put my stuff away here so we have it if we need it when we come back, including my time in a bottle. I'll leave that in there for now. So we have the full set. If I go to the moon, I don't die. Good. Once we're on the moon, we then need to do something like this. There we go. There's all of my junk. Okay. Good. And now we just need to make sure that we never, ever take our armor off when we're on the moon. Good. I didn't know you could stack the curios like that. That's interesting. Not that we need to stack the Heat Protection 3 curio at all. But that's all of our stuff back, which is good. I'll leave this here for now. That's completely fine. Let's go back home. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that here in the overworld, in case that ever happens again, let me take a chest. Let me put that. This is an emergency use only. We're going to put that here. We're going to make sure it's got a full space suit in it. So if things go bad, that's where the space suit is. And I'll take the time in the bottle out of here as well. We could leave that in there, to be fair, but for now, we'll let our power back up a bit faster. Flippin' heck. Okay, we have all of our stuff back, which is good. And going forward, we just need to make sure that we always have our full spacesuit on when we go to the moon, which should be doable, but, we'll see. And like I said, next time we'll come back and we'll start working on the end of this questline and into the rest of this questline as well. Of course, working our way slowly but surely towards the lunar Technium Ingot, which is The third from last, we then have End Technium and then Final Technium, but those are all problems for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.